Hello and welcome to yet another solo video from our series of topics that we hope can push this software industry forward and that we call Raise the Bar. I'm Alex Bolboaca and I'm coming to you from the Mozaic Works studios, and the topic that I like to talk to you today is an older topic for me, one that I've been working on for about 5 years. I published a book on it, but it's still not yet used at the level that I think would really help the industry. So I'm hoping with this video and with a future talk at one conference next year, I'll be able to produce more interest into these ideas. So what is all about? I have called this usable software design, and this is inspired from usability of design in general. Now, when we talk about usability of a certain application or of a device, what we talk about is the level at which it's easy to use that device or that application. How a user is able to interact with that application seamlessly. At the same time, when we talk about software design, our focus is often on the user, on the end user of our product. But that is not the user of software design, that is the user of the end application. So who is the user of software design? Well, the people who interact with the software design, and those people are developers. And I'm using here developers in a general sense, in the agile sense, meaning anybody who takes part of making the product work. Programmers, testers, architects, designers, ops people, everybody fits into this category. So if we look at software design as this code structure that has a user that interacts with it, and that user is the developer, then suddenly we have some interesting consequences. The first interesting consequence is that we can try to apply practices from usability, from UX, into our activity as programmers or as software developers. So what would we find when we try to apply these practices? Let me give you an example. Let's say that we have an existing code base and we have some typical tasks that we implement in that code base. To simplify, let's say that we have an MVC application, and in this MVC application we need to add a new interface for editing a specific entity. You need to add that entity to the database. You need to add some functions in that controller, some functions in the data model, and so on. You know the drill. How about we take this code base to somebody, to a developer, to a programmer who has never seen this code base before, but has some familiarity with the domain, or we explain a bit the domain before, and we tell them, okay, please implement this task for me. And then we look at them and we try to figure out what their challenges are and why they get stuck at certain points. This is the equivalent of a usability testing, but ran on software design instead of ran on an application. What will this reveal? It will reveal some problems that slow us down when we develop, when we do typical tasks in our code base, and that often the team is unaware of or less aware of because they live in that environment. It's not painful anymore. They don't feel it anymore. They don't feel it as an impediment or something that slows them down. They just do the work and assume that that is what the work entails. And by doing this analysis, we can find ways of improving the development time for typical tasks. And if you make an analysis of your project, you probably figure out that there are some typical tasks that take 60%, 70%, 80% of your time. Of course, these tasks tend to change in time. So in the beginning, you will have some types of tasks, and then you'll have a different types of tasks, and so on. Now, of course, this categorization can be a bit difficult to do sometimes, but in principle, I think you can run these types of tests fairly easily. Now, what are some advantages of doing this? Well, why do we do usability testing? We want to reveal a few things. We want to reveal where people get stuck so that we can improve the flows or change the flows. Sometimes we need to add more documentation or to change placement of a button or things like that so that people are able to move faster through and use the application more seamlessly. So the same can happen for usability tests on software design. And if you do this, you'll find out where people get stuck and what problems may arise. So you can speed up development. A second thing that you can find out from usability tests is where people make mistakes. And mistakes in software development are what we call bugs. So fundamentally, you'll find out that there are areas where people are likely to introduce bugs, and by changing a few things, you might be able to improve the usability, thus removing the chance or reducing the chance of developers introducing bugs into that area. What does this mean? Well, fewer bugs means fewer time spent on debugging, and this also means more time spent on actually developing features. But in addition to that, it also means something else. Imagine that you work within a system where the software design is exactly as you expect to, or very close to what you expect to. It's easy to add features. It's easy to avoid introducing bugs. You don't have a lot of bugs. How do you feel? You feel better. You feel better in that part of the code, in that team, in that project. What does it mean that you feel better? Well, studies have shown again and again and again that people who feel better while they are working are more productive because there's more drive to adding new features. It's something we love to develop, we love to write code. So if you can do this within a system that is optimized for changing code, for writing code, then you end up with higher motivation. So you have a situation where just by running usability tests, you get a win-win-win-win type of situation. Developers win, end users win because they get features faster. The business wins because you get features again faster and you can charge for them and so on. You have fewer bugs, so you have users who are better, who are happier with your product. You have um, developers who are happier and produce more. And in addition to that, if you have happy developers, it's more likely that they will bring in and recommend the organization, and then you might be able to hire easier. So you start a lot of virtuous cycles just by doing this type of activity. So this is not all related to usable software design. There are a few more techniques that you can apply. Another technique that I will just briefly mention is that you can analyze the flow of a developer when trying to implement something. And we've done that in general, and we noticed that a big part of writing code, of adding a new feature into existing code, is figuring out where to add code and navigate to that area where you need to add the code. And this leads to some interesting perspectives because you can look at navigability of your design and figure out how to improve it in time so that developers find their way easier and can add features faster. So that's another type of thing that you can do that's also inspired by UX practices, but in this case it's adapted to software design. And then there's a third one, which is I often hear teams of and business people and managers who say, okay, we can hire new people, but it takes them 6 months to get used to the code base and to start being productive. And 6 months is a very long time. How long does it take you to get acquainted to a new iPhone or Android device? Just minutes, seconds, right? And why is that? Because those devices have been optimized for learnability. And this is another area of software design that I feel is not explored enough. What if you would have your developers, your new developers come in and they would be able to become productive in 2 weeks instead of 6 months? And how would you do that? Just by changing the structure of your code or by adding some things to the code that allow for learnability for newcomers. Wouldn't this be worth the effort and the investment in this area? So these are just a few ideas around the topic of usable software design. We start from the idea that developers are the users of software design, and that we can apply the same thinking and the same techniques that people have developed for UX to software design in order to improve the main characteristics of usability for software design. Things like learnability, how fast it is to learn to start using the product effectively, effectiveness, how effective you are with using that design, memorability, what happens if you go on holiday for a month and then come back, can you pick up at the same speed very quickly, avoiding mistakes, and if you make a mistake, finding the mistake very quickly, or recovering from the mistake very quickly. This is something that good products have and that we can also have in software design. And the fifth characteristic is how you feel when you use the software design that you are on. And if you look at all these 5 characteristics, and if you look at the UX techniques that you can apply and you start experimenting with them, then maybe you'll get to a point where many of the things that you are doing are easier and everything goes better and smoother. So of course this sounds like a wild promise. Is it possible that this will change everything? And the truth is, I don't know. I've run experiments on a small teams where I had control, and I am definitely happy to help other teams start their own experiments. And if we can gather some kind of results and figure out whether this works or not and what do we need to do, what are some techniques that we can apply to minimize investment or to speed this up, I would be happy to do so. But the important thing, I think, usability has changed the face of product development, and I believe that usable software design can change the face of software design and software development in general. I just hope that more people would start applying some of these ideas. I'd like to thank you so much for listening and for watching, and if you have any ideas, don't hesitate to comment, share, subscribe, like this video, tell other people about this, and contact us if you want to apply or to learn more about this topic. I plan to do some conference talks next year about this topic, but after that we'll see what will happen. Hopefully more people will pick it up, try it out, and come back with some results. Until then, the book Usable Software Design is available on LeanPub. You can buy it, you can read it. It details the experiments that I have run and how I've done it. And I think it's time to start applying and experimenting with these techniques as well. Thank you so much, and until next time, remember to think, design, and work smart.